I'm saying that really wrong. Illustrated by Bianca. Alright. Make it there a little bit closer. It was summer, and the weather was lovely. The country was beautiful just then, covered with golden corn, green oats, and stacks of hay piled high on the meadows, about which the stork tiptoed gingerly on his long red legs, chattering in Egyptian, the language his mother had taught him. The fields and meadows were surrounded by green forests, in the midst of which were deep lakes, and in the sunniest spot, close to a river, stood an old farmhouse from whose walls great burdocks grew down to the water's edge, so high that little children could stand under them. In this place, just as wild as the thick woods, sat a duck upon her nest waiting for her eggs to hatch. She was tired of sitting still and alone such a long time, and she so seldom had visitors. The other ducks liked better to swim in the river than to sit under the cool burdocks and cackle with her. At last, one egg after another cracked open, and little heads poked out of them. Cheep, cheep, they cried, as they climbed out of their shells and looked about them at the large green leaves. Quack, quack, said her mother, and she allowed them to look as much as they liked, since green is good for the eyes. How large the world is, cried the young ducks, when they found how much more room they now had than when they were inside their shells. Sillies, said their mother, do you think this is all the world? It extends a long way across the other side of the garden, up to the parson's field, but I have never been that far. Are you all here now? She continued, standing up. No, I have not got all you yet. The largest egg still lies there. Oh dear, how long is this going to take? She sat wearily on the nest again. See how long this one is. This might be a long one. she is the grandest of us all. She has Spanish blood in her veins. That's why she's so fat. What? And do you see the red rag around her leg? That is a wonderfully fine thing, and the greatest distinction any duck can have. It shows that one does not want to lose her, and that she is to be recognized by beasts and men. Look smart now, and turn your toes in. Toes. What? A well-brought-up duckling keeps his legs wide apart, just like father and mother. That's it. Now bend your necks and say quack. Quack, quack, quack. The ducklings did as they were told, but the other ducks round about looked at them and said quite boldly, "Look there, now we are to have that flock," as if there were not enough of us already, and oh dear, how ugly that duckling is. We won't stand him, and immediately a duck flew at him and bit him in the neck. What on earth? Let him alone, said the mother. He is doing no harm to anyone. Yes, but he is too large and ungainly, said the duck who had bitten him, and therefore he must be whacked. Oh my goodness. Those are handsome children you have, said the old duck with the rag around her leg. They are all pretty, except this one. I wish you could make him over. That's impossible, your grace, said the mother duck. He is not handsome, but he has a very cheerful disposition, and swims as well as any of the others. I may even say that he will improve in time and become smaller. He has lain too long in the egg, and so he has not come out properly shaped. And patting his neck, she said, besides, he is a drake, and so it does not matter very much. I think he will be very strong and make his way in the world. Okay. My goodness. The other ducklings are pretty enough, said the old duck. Make yourselves at home now, and if you find that of any ill, you may bring it to me. They all felt quite at home now, except for the poor duckling who had been the last to come out of the shell. He was bitten, pushed about, and jeered by both the ducks and the chickens. He is too big, they all said, and the turkey cock, who had been born with spurs and thought himself quite an emperor, pushed about and, puffed himself up like a ship in full sail, made straight for him, and gobbled till he grew red in the face. The poor duckling at his wits' end did not know which way to turn. He was despondent because he was so ugly and the joke of the whole yard. The first day passed in this manner, and afterwards matters became worse and worse. The poor duckling was chased about by everyone. Even his brothers and sisters abused him, and said, if only the cat would catch you, you hideous creature. That is awful. And his mother said, I wish you were far away. The ducks bit him, and the chickens chased him, and the girl who fed the poultry kicked him aside with her foot. Oh, this is so sad. Then he ran and flew over the fence, and the little birds on the hedge flew up into the air in a fright. That is because I am so ugly, thought the poor duckling, shutting his eyes, but he ran on farther. Then he came to a great marsh where the wild ducks lived. Weary and miserable, he stayed here the whole night. Early next morning, the wild ducks flew up to inspect their new companion. What sort of creature are you? What sort of a creature are you? They asked, as the duckling, turning from side to side and bowing, greeted them as well as he could. You are dreadfully ugly, said the wild ducks, but that does not matter to us, so long as you do not marry into our family. Poor thing, he certainly had not thought of marriage. He only wanted permission to lie among the reeds and drink some of the marsh water. He stayed there 2 whole days. Then 2 wild geese came, or rather 2 wild ganders. They were not long out of their shell, and therefore rather bold. Listen, friend, said one, you are so ugly that we like you. Will you join us and become a bird of passage? Nearby there is another marsh with some charming wild geese in it. They are sweet young ladies, all unmarried and all able to say quack. You have a chance to make your fortune among them, ugly as you are. Just that moment, bang, bang, resounded through the air, and the 2 ganders fell dead among the reeds. And the water turned blood red. Bang, bang, sounded the guns again. And the whole flock of wild geese rose up from the reeds as the shots showered down on them. There was a great hunting party, and the hunters were lying in wait all round the marsh. Some were even sitting on the branches of the trees which overhung the water. The blue smoke rose up in clouds among the dark green trees and swept over the pool. The hunting dogs came, splash, splash, into the swamp, and the rushes and reeds bent down beneath their weight on every side. The poor duckling was terribly frightened. He twisted his head round to put it his wing, and just at that moment a frightful large dog appeared. Close behind him, his red tongue hung far out of his mouth, and his eyes glared horrible and ugly. He thrust his nose close to the duckling, opened his great mouth, showed his sharp teeth, and splash, splash, went on without touching him. "Oh, thank heaven," sighed the duckling. "I am so ugly that even the dog won't bite me." And so he lay quite still while the shots rattled the reeds and bang after bang split the air. At last, late in the day, the shots ceased, but even then the poor duckling did not dare to get up. He waited several hours before he looked around, and then he hurried away from the marsh as quickly as he could. He ran across fields and meadows, and there was such a storm raging that he had difficulty making his way. Toward night, the duckling came to a little tumble-down cottage. This hut remained standing only because it could not make up its mind about which way to fall. The wind continued to blow so fiercely round the duckling that he had to sit down to resist it. The storm grew worse and worse. Then he noticed that the door had fallen off one hinge and hung so crookedly that he could slip through the crack into the house, and in this way he entered the room. An old woman dwelt in the house with her cat and her hen. The cat, whom she called Sunny, could arch his back, purr, and even give off sparks, though for that you had to stroke his fur the wrong way. The hen's legs were so short that she was called Chicky Low Legs. She laid good eggs, and the old woman loved her as if she had been her own child. In the morning the strange duckling was discovered at once, and the cat began to purr and the hen to cluck. "What in the world is that?" said the old woman, looking round, but she could not see well, and she mistook the duckling for a fat duck that had strayed. "This is a wonderful prize," she said. "Now I shall have duck's eggs, if only it is not a drake. I must wait and see about that." In this manner the duckling was admitted on trial for 3 weeks, but no eggs came. The cat was master of this house, and the hen its mistress. What? They always said "we" and "the world," for they thought that they represented half of the world, and by far the better half. Okay. The duckling thought there might be 2 opinions about this, but the hen would not permit it. "Can you lay eggs?" she asked. "No. Be so good as to hold your tongue then." And the cat said, "Can you arch your back, purr, or give off sparks?" "No." "Then you better keep your opinions to yourself when sensible people are speaking." The duckling sat in a corner feeling very melancholy. I always want to say melancholy like in Megamind. Melancholy, melancholy, melancholy. Then he began to think of the fresh air and the sunshine, and he was seized by a great urge to float on the water. At last he could not help telling the hen about it. "What on earth are you thinking of?" asked the hen. "You have nothing to do. That's why you have these strange fancies. Lay some eggs or take to purring, and you will get over it." "But it is so delightful to swim on the water," said the duckling. "It is so refreshing to feel it rushing over your head when you dive to the bottom." "That must be very amusing," said the hen. "You must have gone mad." "Ask the cat about it. He is the cleverest creature I know. Ask him if he likes to float on the water or dive under it. I say nothing about myself. Ask our mistress, the old woman. There is no one in the world wiser than she is. Do you imagine she has any desire to float on the water or to duck underneath it?" "You do not understand me," said the duckling. "If we don't understand you, who should? You certainly don't consider yourself cleverer than the cat or the old woman, not to mention me. Don't be foolish, child, and be grateful for all the kindness you have received. Have you not lived in this warm room and in such company from which you might have learned something? But you are foolish, and there is no pleasure in associating with you. Believe me, I speak for your good. I tell you disagreeable things, and there's no surer way than that of knowing who are one's friends. You just set about laying some eggs or learn to purr or to give out sparks." "I think I will go out into the wide world," said the duckling. "Oh, do so by all means," said the hen. So the duckling went away. He floated on the water and ducked beneath it, but he was slighted by every creature because of his ugliness. Now came the autumn, autumn, autumn. The leaves in the woods turned yellow and brown. The wind caught them, and they danced about. The sky looked very cold, and the clouds hung heavy with snow and hail. A raven stood on the fence and cried, "Caw, caw," from sheer cold. His cry was enough to make one shiver, shiver, shiver. The poor duckling certainly as soon as they were out of sight, he ducked right down to the bottom. And when he came up again, he was quite beside himself. He did not know what the birds were, or to what place they were flying, but all the same he felt closer to them than to any other creature he had ever encountered. He did not envy them in the least. How could he even wish to possess such beauty as they had? He would have been content if even the ducks would have given him their company. The winter was so bitterly cold that the duckling was forced to swim about in the water to prevent her from freezing entirely, but every night the hole in which he swam became smaller and smaller. Then it froze so hard that the surface ice cracked, and the duckling was obliged to use his legs continually to prevent the hole from freezing up. At last he was so tired that he could move no more, and thus froze fast into the ice. Early in the morning a peasant came by and saw him. He went out on the ice and hammered a hole in it with his heavy wooden shoe, and carried the duckling home to his wife. There he soon came to life again. The children wanted to play with him, but the duckling thought they were going to injure him, and in his fright fluttered into the milk pan so that the milk spurted out all over the room. The woman shrieked and clapped her hands, at which the duckling flew down into the butter tub, and then into the meal tub and out again. Imagine how he looked by this time. The woman screamed and tried to hit him with the fire tongs. The children tumbled over one another in their efforts to catch him, and they screamed with laughter. Luckily the door stood open, and the poor duckling flew out among the bushes into the newly fallen snow, and there he lay, thoroughly exhausted. This story is so sad. It would be too sad to relate all the hardships he had to undergo during that bitter winter. You're telling me. When the sun began to shine warmly again, the duckling was in the marsh. The larks began their songs again. It was a beautiful spring. Then all at once he could flap his wings with greater strength than before, and they bore him strongly away. Before he knew where he was, he found himself in a large garden where the apple trees were in full blossom, and the air smelled like lilacs whose long branches reached the shores of the lake. The fragrance of spring was everywhere, and from the thicket he saw 3 beautiful white swans approaching him. With rustling feathers they swam lightly over the water. The duckling recognized the beautiful birds, and he was overcome by a strange sadness. I will fly to them, the royal birds, and they will kill me, because I, who am so ugly, dared to approach them. But it won't matter. Better to be killed by them than be chased by ducks, beaten by fowls, pushed about by the hen wife, or suffer so much hunger and misery in the winter. So he flew out into the water and swam toward the beautiful swans. They saw him and sailed toward him with ruffled feathers. "Kill me," said the poor creature, and he bent his head toward the water, expecting his death. But what was it that he saw reflected in the clear stream? He saw below him his own image, but he was no longer a clumsy, dark gray bird, ugly and ungainly. He was himself a swan. It does not matter at all if one is born in a duckyard, if only you come out of a swan's egg. The big swans swam around him and stroked him with their bills. Some little children came into the garden who threw corn and pieces of bread into the water, and the youngest one cried, "There's a new one." The other children shouted with joy, "Yes, a new one has come," and they clapped their hands and danced about, running after their father and mother. They tossed more bread into the water, and they all said, "The new one is the most beautiful of all, so young and handsome," and the old swans bowed their heads before him. He felt very shy and hid his head under his wings, for he did not know what to do or think. He was very happy, yet not at all proud, for a good heart never becomes proud. He thought how he had been pursued and despised, and how he heard them say he was the most beautiful of all birds. Even the lilacs bent their boughs down to the water before him, and the bright sun shone warm and cheering. He rustled his feathers and